Welcome to Sunlit Brushstrokes. Today we'll be sketching these graceful poppies. After we lay down our basic shapes, we're going to add color, details, and then blend it together with a delicate touch of water. Let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so I actually went ahead and did two poppy paintings here. When I did this one, I kind of kept the shapes really basic, the technique's a little bit more basic, but then I thought, I'd like to try adding just a little bit more character to this. So I went ahead and did this one as well. It's a tiny touch more challenging, but I've included it in this video so that if you're up for a little bit of a challenge or you just want to see how I tweak things up to make something a little bit more interesting, you can watch it. You might decide you like one or another better, or maybe you'll take some techniques from both and combine them to create your own piece of art. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on what poppy is your favorite. Now for my watercolor pencils, I've been working mainly with the Staedtler brand. However, I have supplemented with a couple of darker olive greens here as well. I tend to like having a light, a medium, and a dark neutral green. However, if you like more intense greens, you can definitely go ahead and use those. Now for the poppy, we're going to be really working with these warm colors here, the yellow, mostly orange, a touch of red orange, and then there's a few places I'm actually going to add this darker pink. But for the most part, we're going to be sticking with these colors. Then I'll be using a tiny bit of burnt sienna, maybe in the centers a little bit, or just where I need a tiny little bit of a kind of neutral accent. And I've gone ahead and cut a small piece of watercolor paper for all of these small miniature florals that we've been doing together. I'm just working with an inexpensive paper, either Canson XL or an Artist Loft, something that's smooth, and yet I'm also looking for something that's designed for wet media. So I do like something that's maybe 140 pounds just because it doesn't buckle as badly as something that's lighter. Okay, so let's start with our simple poppy. I'm going to begin with this X shape, similar to what I did in my recent video of the cosmos. But I'm going to have this one start with a curved line like this. And then this one can be longer and this will be shorter. So it's kind of an X shape, but again, we're going to have something that's more like a 3/4 profile. And then I'm going to leave some room here for the center of our poppy. And then I'm going to just go ahead and draw a petal over each of these, kind of like this is in the center of the petal. I'm just going to create a petal on each line. And at the front of these petals here, the side petals, I'm going to make it like they're folded over so that this section is kind of curled towards us like that. And I'm going to do the exact same thing on this side. Make sure that these are big enough petals. And then this back one will just be nice and big and tall. And then this one will be, again, at an angle, and then this part I'll actually make it look like it's folded as well, so that it's this is coming towards us, but then curled over, and so we can see the underside of this petal here. So these lines will be kind of coming in this direction, whereas these ones will be coming, radiating from the center this way. But before I add too many creases and folds, I want to make sure that I've kind of created a little bit of space for my on my little stamen here. So I'm just going to erase a teeny weeny bit and come in with my yellow and just do a little bit of this scribbly thing, almost like I'm doing a ring of yellow around it, but I'm going to leave that section, of course, alone. And maybe I'll just put a little bit of yellow as a base coat, but it's going to end up being a little bit more green afterwards. So just go ahead, get that yellow on there, and then I'll come in and get all my little creases and folds, because there's a lot of creases and folds in a poppy. They're very, very textured, even though they only have 4 petals. They just have all these beautiful folds in them that really is what gives them their character, I think. And just do some more of that here and in the back. And I'm going to darken this section here because, again, it's kind of coming towards us. It's folded over. The light's probably not hitting it as much. So I'm going to just do that. I want to make sure that I still got a very nice textured ruffled edge here as well. Maybe just exaggerate my edges a little bit. I don't want to have it look like a coloring book outline, but I definitely want some nice ruffled edges. All right, let's go ahead and do one that's on its side. So I'm going to do this one. This will be the front petal. So it's just going to come, I'm going to give it a little bit more texture. Maybe I'm a little bit too wild there, and make all these come radiating to the center. This is where the stem is going to be. And then I'm going to put some petals, 2 petals on the side. Again, I need to really focus on keeping them a little bit of nice ruffle on the edges and bring them kind of facing towards the center. And then finally, there's going to be a back petal here. And I'm going to do the same thing. Again, everything is kind of radiating to the center or from the center rather. And I'm going to just darken the back petal where the edges are meeting these ones in front. And I'm going to do the same thing with these ones so that it gives the impression that this one is the very first or front petal, and then these ones, and then finally the back one, right? So do something like that. And then somewhere here, I'm going to want to put my little bud, but I'm just going to go ahead and put some stems quickly. And then the bud will be like here. And I'm going to just give it a couple leaves like so. And then I'm going to have the beautiful orange color kind of peeking out. It's just starting to pop. Then I got to figure out where I'm going to place my leaves. So I'm going to maybe put one here. Maybe a smaller one here. I don't know, maybe one there. But I'm going to go ahead and do the leaves with this darker green. So I'm using my green that's more like an olivey green. I'm going to go ahead and put some lines here where I'm going to add the foliage. And I want to keep it simple. I'm just going to scribble and kind of give them a little bit of texture on both sides. Just give some texture to the main leaf. And then again, each of these little things, I'm going to just make these little scribbles that kind of radiate off of each of these little I don't know if you want to call them stems, or I guess maybe veins is a better word. And then when I add my water, I'll be able to get them a little smoother looking, because right now I suppose it's almost looking a little bit like a pine branch, and that's definitely not what I'm after. But I think the water will kind of soften things and it won't look quite so much like pine. Just going over my light green stems as well. And I'll give this one a little bit of the same thing that I've been doing. Maybe just a few less little stem or little vein things here. And I'll do a mixture of greens on that bud. I'll put the light green first, and then I'll just go ahead and put a little bit more dark on top. Thinking we could even extend this branch maybe behind this little bud. I don't know, it feels a little bit risky to do that, but it feels like it just needs a little something more going in this direction. So extend these out a little bit this way. And then I'm going to go ahead and color the center of this green. And I'll use my burnt sienna to kind of create a little bit of texture on the top and a little bit of a shadow down the side of this. Just throwing a little bit more green. I threw a little bit of medium green on there, but really I think either green would work. And then I'm going to take my burnt sienna and just do a tiny little bit of like curly dots on top of my yellow, because I'm going to want a little bit more definition on there. And then I'm even wondering about throwing a few splashes of yellow, or just taking my pencil and coloring a tiny bit of yellow into my lighter areas on the poppies. So I'm just kind of scribbling, but in the direction of my creases and folds. So just kind of a scribble. And then I might even grab a little bit of my red orange and just put it in the areas that are the darkest, kind of where I've already defined some shadows, but I just want to put a tiny bit more. Maybe a little bit into the bud. Maybe a little bit over here, maybe even here. Maybe there's a bit of shadow in this area. Again, you don't have to use this color for that, but I just thought, why not have a little bit of variety? So we've got the orange, the red orange, and the yellow all kind of working together, but definitely keeping the red orange for the darkest sections or the areas that might be in shadow a little bit. Going to come in here with a little bit more of my orange so I don't overpower it with the orange, with the red and the yellow. Okay, let's go ahead and get the water on here and see how it looks, and then we'll know if we need to add anything else. So what I'm going to do is, again, as usual, start in my lighter areas. Wow, there's a lot of yellow there. And I'm actually using very light pressure with my brush, and even leaving a little bit of white in a few spots, just to kind of even make those creases and folds even more dramatic, because there's white shining in them. So I'm just going back and forth again in the same direction as my creases and folds, and just gently kind of working that paint around, washing my brush fairly often so that I kind of lost my whites back there. Let's try that again down here. Washing my brush often so that I don't mush things around too much. I feel like I did mush things around a little bit more than I would have liked in the back. So try this along here. And I'm going to leave the folded part for now and then come back to it later, just so that this part can dry a bit. And I'll come back over here and do that over here. Try and make sure I'm wet enough so that when I'm wet, things get, you know, moistened really quickly and I can move on. If things are if I'm too damp in this particular instance, there's a chance I'll over massage things and then I will lose my little white sections. So I'm actually working fairly wet. My brush is fairly wet. Now, do I dare do these ones here? We can try it. I'm going to leave a little white gap. I think that's maybe working. Maybe. Yeah, I think that might be okay. Let's go and do the buds so that that's there. And I'm actually, let's go ahead and do the bud. And then I'm going to even do the green leaves around the bud so that the green can mingle a tiny bit into the orange. I think that will look pretty. I actually want to do a little bit of that. I want to get this green mingling in our oranges in a few spots. So I'll do that on the stem here. This one, it won't really work yet because this is still dry, but even just that is working. So I'm going to just come in here and wet my stems, and then I'll wet my leaves. So again, I'm using fairly soft pressure with my brush, and as I said, I'm going to want to kind of get these to blend out a little bit. I'm actually very wet, and I'm hoping that will kind of soften the edges of my leaves just to keep them from looking like pine branches, because there's a lot of texture in these poppy leaves, but with the pencil they were almost looking a little bit too, I don't know, pine branchy. And so I think the water is kind of just softening them and making them a little bit more like a poppy leaf. But you can decide if you think that looks like a poppy leaf. You can always make it even smoother looking if you'd like to. And I'll do this one in the back. And then while it's wet, I think I'm going to grab my orange pencil and just drop a little bit of my orange into a few spots. Just again, woo, that was very strong. I want to kind of harmonize my colors, but just be careful. I think I put too much orange on my brush, and I might need to blend that around a little bit because it's almost a bit too there. And I think I'm going to grab my green and just do a little bit of this technique to kind of go on top of a little bit on that orange, because like I say, I think I kind of went a little bit overboard with my orange. Okay, we're going to call that maybe good enough. Then I'll just come in and do this stamen, wet it, or stigma rather. Stigma is in the middle, right? And then the stamen are around the edges, or these little things. So I'll wet them, and then I'll come in here. Oh, I like how I got a little bit of orange in there. That's nice. Okay, and then I'm going to wet this. I know that's still wet up there, but I'm just going to go ahead and wet this anyway and see how it works out. Hoping I'll be dry enough it won't totally bleed together. So I've let things dry completely, and I think I'm going to actually push my shadows just a little bit further. I feel like I could get some deeper shadows in a few spots, so I'm just going to do that with my red. This is totally optional, but It'll just add a little bit more dimension to our piece here. Maybe a little extra shadow on this side. This is actually the red orange, sorry. I'm actually using a combination of the red orange as well as the darker pink. It's kind of a magenta tone. And you can just leave it dry or just go over it with another coat of water. As usual, you always want to make sure that when you do apply this extra layer of pencil that your paper is completely dry. And then you can go ahead and add the pencil, then the water. I'm going to throw a bit of texture back into some of these leaves that have kind of gotten washed out in the wetting process. You could even add touches of brown. This is my burnt sienna. I actually like that enough. I think I could almost leave it unwet, but I'll wet it quick. Now, after I did the first poppy, I kind of thought, you know, I'd like to see if I can't add a little bit more interest, a little bit more design into the way I've done my poppy. So I'll run through this next one pretty quickly and I'll try and speed up the parts that are just redundant. But the things that I did differently, I tried to make the petals a little bit more ruffled and different. And so you can see this one's a little bit more droopy. I really succeeded more with drooping the petal on this one. And I've actually rotated the whole flower so that it's not looking at us, you know, with perfect symmetry. We kind of have this turned on its side. So it's like the whole thing is kind of rotated like that. You can kind of see this is actually more where the center of this front petal would be. I also took note of the light source as I sketched this and how the light would be falling and where I would be putting my shadows. And with this one, I decided my light source was up in this corner here. And so that's where I made the decisions that I made. But you can definitely have your light source coming from a different direction, either right above or to the side, and then you'll change your shadows accordingly. And if you'd like to learn more about light source, let me know. I'd love to do a lesson about that. And then the other thing I did quite a lot differently was changing up the leaves. When I took some time to look over poppy leaves, there's such a variety in God's creation. And I thought, you know what, it would be fun to try a couple different techniques. And this one was a little bit more challenging than the first one, but it kind of adds some fun variety. So if you'd like to see how I did that, I'll be demonstrating that on this section of the video as well. And there you have our second poppy. Rather than wait and add the center after, you could kind of mark it out for yourself. Just kind of create this little U shape with a little ellipse on the top, and that can be our center of our poppy. If you want to mark yourself that by putting that there first, you definitely can. Might make this a little easier. And then I'm going to go ahead and put my first guide for my first petal. This one I'm going to change it though, and I'm going to make it droop downwards. Then the back one will be just kind of the same idea as we did before. It'll stand upright, and then we'll have a short one coming this way. Then I'm going to go ahead and just draw these in, but you're going to see that the way that I do them is going to be a slight bit different because of the way that I drew these lines. This is where I'm going to have the part that's folded over a little bit darker. I didn't follow my guideline too well, did I, with getting that petal to droop? But I really like the shape of this petal, so I think I'm just going to leave it, and then maybe I can add a drooping petal to my second poppy. Then the back petal is about the same as before. Could even be taller if you wanted to. And then this petal, I've actually made the folded part a little bit like wider on this side and then go narrower. And again, I'm just letting myself kind of have a bumpiness, almost like having the shakes as I'm drawing, but not quite, but just trying to not be smooth and very, very controlled in the way that I'm doing my drawing. I think I made this one a little bit taller than I want it to be. Let's see if I can shrink it down a smidge. Then my next one is going to be over here. And again, I'm going to do that kind of the bowl to start with. But this time I'm going to make the center line here rather than straight in the middle there. And again, at the top, I'm going to kind of go bumpy, but this is going to be the tallest part because this is actually the center. So I'm kind of turning this a little bit on its side. So then I'm going to just quickly draw in a line for this one. Now this one, you could make it come up almost like it's almost behind this one, or you can actually make it droop and make it come down like it's, you know, a petal that's kind of flopping down. And that's what I'm going to do here, just to make it more interesting. I'm just going to go ahead and add some of our petal onto that. I kind of have that little bit odd shape there, but you know what? I'm going to pretend maybe this is the center here instead of all the way down here, and then I'll just create the petal like this. Add some here. So I'm kind of creating these shapes or inventing them as I go. And then I'm going to go ahead and do the back one right there. I'm going to widen that front one a bit. And you can see those are actually a little bit more interesting to look at. A little bit more challenging though, because as you can see, these lines were definitely different over here. And then these ones, I almost kind of did it as I went. My first line was here, my second one went here, then there. And I didn't even draw one for the back. I just went ahead and filled that area in with a petal. So I'm going to go ahead and color it the same way I did the last one. I'll speed things up so you don't have to watch the whole process. I'm going to be keeping my light source the same as I did last time. And so as you can see, I went darker here because this petal is kind of blocking the sun. This is a little bit darker in the back. This is the left side will be darker because of it being further from the sun. And then it's casting a shadow onto this one that's kind of lying down. So that's why it's darker down here, is because this is creating a block to the light. Don't forget to add those stamen before it gets too late. Then I'm going in with my red or my pink color. So I've got my red, orange, and my dark pink, and I'm just going to intensify the shadows. So again, on the left side of this one, and there is some on the right petal here because again, it's turning away from the light. Same thing's happening here. This is turning away from the light. We're going to push this petal behind. I'll probably have to put a little more orange on top of that because that pink is really going to show weird. I'm darkening this section of the petal where the stamen are going to be casting their shadow. And of course, I'm darkening this one where it's below these two petals. So the light will be blocking it in more than one place. And this is turning away from the light down here. I'm going to put a very, very small amount of yellow again for some variety. I'm using my olive green and my burnt sienna to add a little bit of detail to the center of the flower. And a little bit of burnt sienna on these little stamen. Adding my stems and my little buds similar to the way I did before. I'm going to do something a little different with the leaves. I'm going to aim for something like this. So I create the center vein and then some side veins. Then I'm going to outline them with kind of a bumpy, a little bit of an abstract motion so that I just get a really organic looking leaf shape. Slopped on that bottom one. I'll do another small one here, except this time I'm going to make it so that one side has shorter veins just because it's almost set on its side a little bit, so we can't see as much of these ones over here. Something like that. Then of course I'll be coloring it with a lighter green and then going in with my darker green to create the shadows. So I'm just going to show you the shadows here. Just so you have a rough idea what I'm going to be doing when I actually work on my poppy. So I create the center vein and then some side veins. Then I'm going to come in and do a little bit of a bumpy outline. And this side, the leaves are going to be kind of like a little bit shorter because it's on a little bit of an angle or at the side. And then here, I'm going to make them so that we can see more of the detail. Slopped up a bit on this bottom one, but it's okay. That's the beauty of watercolor pencils. We can kind of correct ourselves as we go and then just cover it up. Now I'm going to speed it up while I color. Let's add a little leaf here. I'm adding detail and shadows with my darkest olive green. Again, since my light source is on the right, my shadows will be on the left of each leaf, as well as the lower areas that are furthest from the light. I'll quickly touch up our bud and stems. And then I'll go ahead and just wet it as usual. Again, I'm going to speed up the video while I'm wetting, since that's kind of the same technique as we've already been using. I really like starting in my lightest sections and moving into the darker areas. Get my water into the camera too so you guys can see better what I'm doing. And if you find your shapes are kind of bleeding together, that's when you know you just need to let them dry between shapes. Ooh, that's a lot of water. But as you can see, I'm kind of leaving, again, a little bit of that white area behind so that I get a little bit of variation happening, and the white kind of leaves a nice, almost a highlight. It's not quite a highlight, but it is kind of like that. So I do like leaving little bits of white behind. Maybe let a little bit of that green run into our poppy. The water sure brightens these leaves up nicely, doesn't it? Finally, we'll go into the center here and finish things off. So there you can compare our two poppies. I'd love to hear in the comments, which poppy techniques do you like best? Do you enjoy the slight bit of challenge of the second one, or do you prefer the simple first one that we did today? I'm looking forward to hearing from you and also creating more artwork with you soon. In the meantime, I hope this tutorial has brought a little taste of God's beauty and peace into your everyday life, and that it's inspired you to continue enjoying your own creative journey. See you again soon. Bye.